Not everyone was convinced. Some believed it was too good to be true. Others worried that it was just another promise that would never come to life. But then the first construction trucks arrived. Workers started measuring land, clearing space, making way for something new. And for the first time in years, the town had something they had almost forgotten: hope. Yet as things moved forward, obstacles emerged. Some longtime residents feared change, worried about outsiders coming in and disrupting their way of life. A few business owners resisted, skeptical of the new opportunities being offered. And beneath it all, there were those who believed that no amount of money or effort could bring back what was lost. But Melania didn't waver. She returned to the town, not just once, but again and again. She met with families, spoke at town hall meetings, and reassured them that this wasn't just another passing initiative. This was about them, about their future, about making sure the next generation didn't have to leave to find a better life. The town was changing, but with change came resistance. And just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, an unexpected challenge threatened to bring it all crashing down. Just when it seemed like the town was on the verge of a new beginning, everything took an unexpected turn. The community center's construction was well underway. Businesses were starting to apply for grants, and people were finally daring to believe that things could change. But then, out of nowhere, the funding hit a roadblock. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the project had run into legal trouble. Others believed political opposition was to blame, and a few even suspected that it had all been a publicity stunt after all. The town, which had just started to feel hopeful, found itself teetering on the edge of disappointment once again. People gathered at the town square, voices rising in frustration and confusion. The mayor tried to calm them, but even he didn't have all the answers. Sarah, the single mother who had been ready to leave, now felt stuck in limbo. Ray, the diner owner, shook his head and muttered that maybe they should have known better than to believe. And then just as suddenly as the bad news had come, another surprise arrived. A press conference was announced. Melania Trump was coming back to town. The crowd gathered early, unsure of what to expect. Some still held on to hope, others prepared for disappointment. When Melania finally stepped onto the small outdoor stage in the town square, there was a hush. She didn't bring cameras or a grand production. She simply stood before them and spoke. She acknowledged the concerns, the fear that things would fall apart, just as they had so many times before. Then she reassured them. This project wasn't going anywhere. She had personally ensured that every roadblock would be cleared, that the funding was not just a promise, but a guarantee. More than that, she spoke about why she had chosen this town. It wasn't random. It wasn't political. It was because when she first stepped onto these streets, she saw something that reminded her of what America was meant to be, a place where hard work and community could rebuild anything. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she listened, clutching her young son's hand. Ray, standing at the back of the crowd with his arms crossed, let out a long breath and gave a slow nod. The people, once doubtful, began to believe again. Within weeks, the final approvals came through. The construction resumed, the grants were distributed, and businesses began reopening. The community center stood tall, not just as a building, but as a symbol of resilience. The town changed, not overnight, and not without struggle. But it did change. People stayed. Families thrived. A place once on the brink of being forgotten became a story of revival, a story of hope. And as Melania Trump took one last quiet walk through the streets she had come to know, she smiled, knowing that one simple gesture had turned into something far greater than anyone had imagined. A quiet town, nearly forgotten by the world, sat tucked away between rolling hills and winding country roads. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, where the corner store still had a chalkboard menu, and where time seemed to move just a little slower. But beneath its charm, the town was struggling. Businesses had shut their doors, families were moving away in search of better opportunities, and a sense of hopelessness had settled in like an unshakable fog. Then something happened, something no one in the town could have ever expected. It started with a letter delivered in a crisp white envelope, bearing a name that instantly sent whispers through the town: Melania Trump. At first, people thought it had to be a mistake. Why would someone like her, a former First Lady, take an interest in their little town? Was it some kind of publicity stunt? A misunderstanding? But as details emerged, it became clear this was real. And it was about to change everything. The letter wasn't just a polite acknowledgement or a brief note of encouragement. It was a promise that something was coming, something big. But no one knew exactly what. Some thought it might be a donation, a charity event, or maybe even a visit. Others dismissed it entirely, convinced it was too good to be true. After all, they had been let down before. Days turned into weeks, and anticipation grew. The mayor, a man who had spent years watching his town fade into the background, could barely contain his curiosity. He reached out, hoping to get more details, but all he got was a simple response: "Be ready. Hope is coming." And then, one crisp autumn morning, a convoy of black SUVs rolled into town. The air buzzed with excitement as people gathered on the sidewalks, watching in stunned silence. When the car door finally opened, there she was, Melania Trump, stepping out with the quiet grace she was known for. She didn't come with an entourage of cameras or flashing lights. She didn't make grand speeches or promises that sounded too good to be true. Instead, she simply listened. She walked the streets, talked to the people, and saw firsthand the struggles they faced. But it was what happened next that would be remembered forever. A single gesture, one that no one saw coming, would turn this town into a symbol of hope, a story that would be told for generations. The town had never seen anything like this before. People whispered among themselves, watching as Melania Trump moved through their quiet streets, stopping to shake hands, to listen, to truly see them. It wasn't just a visit, it was something more. She walked into the old diner where the scent of fresh coffee still filled the air, even though the place had lost most of its customers. The owner, an older man named Ray, wiped his hands nervously on his apron, unsure what to say. "Didn't think I'd ever have someone like you in here," he admitted with a half smile. Melania just smiled back. "You have a beautiful town," she said simply. Ray looked around and chuckled, shaking his head. "Used to be," he muttered. And that was the problem, wasn't it? The town asterisk used to be asterisk something special. There was a time when kids played in the streets without worry, when the shops on Main Street were bustling, when people believed that if they worked hard enough, things would get better. But the factories closed, jobs disappeared, and hope became something people only spoke about in past tense. As Melania continued her walk, she met Sarah, a single mother of two, who had been on the verge of leaving town for good. "There's just nothing left here," Sarah admitted, shifting her baby on her hip. "I don't want to go, but what choice do I have?" Melania listened, nodding, absorbing every word. She wasn't here to offer empty sympathy. She was here because she had a plan. The town didn't know it yet, but things were already in motion. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the mayor received a phone call that left him speechless. The next morning, news broke. A foundation, backed by Melania, had chosen this very town for a revitalization project, unlike anything they had ever seen. But it wasn't just money. It was opportunity. A community center was set to be built, offering education, skills training, and resources for families. Small business grants would be available to help struggling shop owners rebuild. Infrastructure projects were being fast-tracked, creating jobs for people who had been without work for years. It was everything they had needed, but had never dared to believe was possible.